Yeah, Protista's so small, but I just want to find them. First, they gotta define them. Are they animal, fungi, plant related? Can you please remind me? They're so diverse, man, it is crazy. In the ocean, yeah, it's busy. About 200,000 species in the world, most of which you can't even see. Eukaryotes, it's strange, since humans are in the same range. But monocellular they can be. Unicellular most commonly. Asexual is how most reproduce. Binary fission, autotrophs, algae, heterotrophs, protozoa. They're so small, there are so many. We don't know where they came to be. Bacteria is the theory, although we don't know entirely. Phagocytosis is how they eat. Go food with cell membrane. You want to learn, we want to teach. Follow us, and here we go.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Woman vs. Wild. Today we'll be looking at a very interesting yet very underappreciated kingdom. Kingdom Protista! You may think you have no idea what this kingdom is, but trust me, you've probably come in contact with this kingdom almost as much as you've come in contact with any other kingdom. Yet you've probably been mistaking it for bacteria. So before we begin, let's get one thing clear. Protists are not bacteria or fungus because they are far more complex and diverse than the bacteria kingdom. Also, all protists are eukaryotes, which means they are either multicellular with many cells or unicellular with only one cell. Also, plant-like, and they are usually classified as algae. They are also, almost all protists live in aquatic settings because there are three different methods of living. First, free living and on their own, which is in fresh water or the ocean. Secondly, in symbiosis, which means they're living off another organism to survive, and that other organism is relying on them because it's mutual. And the third way is through parasites, which means they're living off another organism and hurting that organism in the process. But before we get too carried away, let's just head off to their natural habitat, the ocean!
Hello, welcome to the beach in Women vs. Wild. Today we will be looking at photosynthetic protists, which, as their name indicates, they get their food through photosynthesis. And they are generally classified as plant-like. Now they are split up into 6 divisions based on which pigments they hold within them. All of them have chlorophyll A, some of them have chlorophyll C, and only a few of them have chlorophyll B. And they also usually contain other pigments such as carotenoids, etc.
The first division is dinoflagellate, which is abundant in plankton. It occurs in large numbers, and when it does occur in large numbers, it causes a certain bloom that causes the ocean to turn red, and it's very toxic, so you can't like eat anything because all the shellfish will become toxic. Luckily, if you look at the ocean, it's not red, so it's safe.
People are safe in their
All the
swimming.
people are safe without the red toxicness. And also, a cool thing about the red algae is that they are bioluminescent, and which means it's like lightning bugs where they light up at night. So that's pretty cool.
The second division in the photosynthetic protists are Euglenophyta, which are the most common example of them is Euglena, and they have flagella which help them move around, and their most determining feature of them is that they actually have an eye. They have a stigma which attracts to natural light, which helps them because they are photosynthetic. However, sometimes if there's not light, they will eat by phagocytosis, which is very interesting.
Okay, the third division is Phaeophyta, which is commonly known as brown-eyed algae. And here at this beach, look, come closer, we found some brown-eyed algae for you to gaze your eyes upon. Here's some brown algae, and it's multicellular. It lives in marine temperate zones in coastal areas. Here's some more.
You can see this one's called kelp-like.
Yeah, because an example is kelp for brown algae right here. Very kelp-like.
Oh, and also our next division is Chlorophyta, which is green algae, and it's found in fresh water and salt water. And look, we have it right next to the brown algae. It is the only group that contains chlorophyll B. Oh, and if we move the camera over here, there's some more, a vast amount over here. As I was saying, it's the only algae that contains, almost the only that contains chlorophyll B. Some examples are the Volvix, the Ulva, the Spirogyra, the Chlamydomonas, and the Clostridium. And it is found within other organisms such as the lichens, hydra, and polar bear hair. Next, Maura?
Well, our next division is Protista, also known as red algae. Now, we don't have an example to show you here because it's found in tropical temperatures and it's found deeper in the ocean. So unless you want to go to the Bahamas and take deep sea fishing or something,
We'll have to do it on
our next episode, you will see us exploring red algae. But yeah, so it's also multicellular, just like the green algae. Okay, our last and final division is Protista, which is known as golden algae, and it mostly is
photosynthetic, but it's also very colorless. Now, it does occur in not only the ocean like this one, but it also occurs in lakes because it's food for zooplankton. Now, the interesting part is if there is not enough light, it will become heterotrophic, or if there's just tons of food and bacteria around for it to eat, it will become a predator and eat its prey.
Ready, go.
Okay, our second subgroup of protists that we will be talking about is heterotrophs with cilia, and they're in the phylum Coeliophora. Now, cilia is actually tiny hair-like structures that surround the protist that wave back and forth to help it move, and it also helps it eat by engulfing the food by pushing the food towards the protist, and it engulfs it with its cytoplasm. And the cilia occurs in tufts or little hairs around the protist.
Now, one example of a protist with cilia is a paramecium. A paramecium does use cilia, and it uses it to push in the food into its cytoplasm, and then the food is put into vesicles, which have digestive enzymes, so it can digest the food. The cilia is pretty cool because it kind of works like pseudopods. They come together and give it temporary feet so that the paramecium can run almost. The paramecium is just a very general example, but
there are actually 8,000 species of the phylum Coeliophora so far, discovered.
Recently discovered.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of them are Pseudogorticella clampi, Zoothamnia paraboscula, and some more common ones are the paramecium, the stentor, the sucatoria, the vorticella, and those are some more common ones.
Okay, our next subgroup is non-mobile heterotrophs, which have pseudopods, which are extensions of the cytoplasm that are used to reach out to engulf food into the cytoplasm through a process called phagocytosis. And that's why they're called heterotrophs, because they don't get their food from the sun or something. They get it from another source, like bacteria that they engulf with phagocytosis.
Now, there are different phylums that come under non-mobile heterotrophs, and one of them is Actinopoda, which their pseudopods actually differ from regular ones because they're more like ray-like tentacles. And then you also have the phylum Foraminifera, which is actually these protists have shells on them made from calcium carbonate, and they have little holes through which the pseudopods come out, which is pretty cool. They reproduce through asexual reproduction, and
they are found in either soil, fresh water, so not here at the beach, but and marine, and they can also be parasitic.
Okay, so now some examples of them are radiolarians and heliozoans. Now, after the commercial break, we'll be at a different spot, and we have to leave the beach, sorry, but we're going to find another wild environment amongst protists congregate. The woods!
Hey, we're back from the beach and talking about non-mobile heterotrophs, which can also live in the soil right here in this forest floor, because it's very damp and nice. But right now, we're going to talk about heterotrophs with flagellates, which don't live in the soil, but which are found in termites, which we're searching for in a log that the termites have invaded, because heterotrophs with flagellates live inside the termites.
They help the termites digest the cellulose, which means they're living in a symbiotic relationship with them. By the way, folks, this is Catherine, your other host. We could not fit our camera crew in this dense, wild forest, so we're exploring the wild, just the two of us, without protection.
Wild, all natural.
A diagram is shown on the screen of a heterotrophic flagellate and what it looks like.
Dude, okay, so let's look for that log infested with
more!
termites.
I think I see one over there.
Do you see one? Let's
let's
check it out. Let's check it out. Watch out for
now,
the dense
while
trees.
Maura is investigating this log to find out if this is what we need, remember, heterotrophic flagellates mostly live solitarily, but they do form colonies. They reproduce asexually through binary fission. They are also homokaryotic, which means they have one type of nucleus, and their feeding habits are either holozoic, which means they feed on the living, or saprozoic, meaning they feed on dead organic material.
Okay, we need to check this
out. Whoa, did we find something?
We're finding holes made by termites, which means this is a perfect spot to find heterotrophs with flagellates, because they live inside. As we already said, they live inside the termites with a symbiotic relationship.
The specific heterotrophic flagellate that live inside these ants or termites are Trichonympha. Another type of heterotrophic protist is the Trypanosoma, which lives within humans and causes African sleeping disease and Chagas disease.
No, on an African safari, I've definitely gotten that disease before, but, you know, that's not a fun experience, and so you definitely want to stay away from that. These pearls. You see, there's no animals here. It's because they were drinking from that creek, and it's not good.
And the funny thing is, people usually think it's because of bacteria, but as you've been learning, protists are not bacteria, and bacteria does not cause most of those diseases that come from contaminated food and water.
That's right.
We'll be back, folks, in a couple. Over here, as Maura has mentioned, is part of the heterotrophic with limited mobility. Now, before I begin, let me explain how they actually feed. They create this structure called a plasmodium, which has only a nuclei, no other organelles. And that plasmodium moves slowly across decaying organic material, engulfing the microorganism. What's the rate that it moves at, more?
Oh, well, they travel so fast.
Extremely slow.
1 inch per hour is how fast they travel.
Now, even though our cameras are very advanced, you can see the spiny, almost white fuzzy threads. And the difference between this and regular old fungi, is that these water molds is that the water molds form reproductive cells with flagellates during their life cycle. And that is how they move across this log. That is why they have limited mobility.
No, you can't see it as detailed as we would like, because this is all a colony of slime molds.
Slime molds, which are specifically called, which a specific example of them, as you can see, is Saprologinia. And they belong to the phylum Umacayata, and they belong to the phylum Umacayata. Last, we'll be moving on to our probably most exciting and interesting type of protist, spore formers. Don't touch your remote.
As Catherine left off before the commercial break, we're going to learn about spore formers.
Get away.
Which is probably one of the most exciting types of Protista that we'll be examining, because they are purely parasites, which means, you know, they live off of another organism while hurting it. And see, there's tons of mosquitoes here, and that's why it's crazy with all the flying in my face.
Well, but why? Tell them why we're going through this.
Well, spore formers live within the mosquitoes, because mosquitoes are their hosts, and they are transferred between the mosquitoes. That's how they move. They don't move with flagellates or anything like that. They move through
the host. And being transferred, yes. They belong to the phylum Apicoplexum, and they form resistant spores, which are infectious bodies that are the parts that are actually being passed onto the hosts. Spores are haploid haploid reproductive cells, which can develop directly into adults through very complex life cycles.
A specific type of spore former is Plasmodia, and there are 4 types which cause malaria in humans. The 4 types are
Plasmodia falciparum, Plasmodia vivax, Plasmodium malariae, and Plasmodium ovale.
This is a very simple diagram showing the cycle of fertilization for a spore former when in a host.
Thank you for joining us for Woman vs. Wild.
See you next week!